Do you just need one or two? Just one? Yeah, they're good. You want it on that side or this side?
This side.
Cool. That side? Oh, turn it this way. Good? So,
8, 6, 7, 5, 3.
oh,
Like in law, like English numbers.
better?
I used to
Oh,
know.
flip.
Simpler.
There it is. Right to the point, right? Right, yes. How's he gonna get out here now? Head out. Yeah, there's gonna be a crawl under. Let's set up for the crawl.
Crawl under. I would literally pay money.
He's not looking at you.
Get on that, man.
Make that happen. Him and we got the trunk.
About the gray.
Is he gonna do the shoot thing, like going at it for like 30 seconds to make sure everybody's talking about the Air Force. Are you kidding me?
Brand new, brand new.
Oh, that one says Shutdown. It's a similar font. The other one says Shutdown, right?
Giving. Stop. This project 20. No, this is done. That one was stop. Me. Sorry. Yes. True.
Salt treatment, strategic representation.
Heads up, everyone.
Yes.
Don't say salt very loud.
Salt, different salt.
Good morning, everyone. Yesterday, House Democrats held a successful hearing under the leadership of the Steering and Policy Committee in partnership with the House Democratic Caucus Task Force on Trump's Project 2025, discussing the dangers of the extreme MAGA Republican effort through Trump's Project 2025 to exercise total control over the lives of the American people. Extreme MAGA Republicans and Donald Trump can run from Project 2025, but we will never let them hide, because it is the extreme MAGA Republican plan for taking over the federal government in an extreme way and jamming their right-wing ideology down the throats of the American people. When it comes to extreme MAGA Republicans exercising total and complete control over everyday Americans, they don't simply have concepts. They have a plan. They have a detailed plan. They have a 922-page plan. It's called Trump's Project 2025. It will criminalize abortion care, impose a nationwide abortion ban, and require government surveillance of pregnancies and miscarriages. Trump's Project 2025 will end overtime pay for hardworking American taxpayers. Trump's Project 2025 will end Medicare as we know it. Trump's Project 2025 will decimate Head Start, and Trump's Project 2025 will abolish the Department of Education and end public education in America as we know it. Those are just the highlights. I congratulate the members of the Steering and Policy Committee, the Democratic campaign committee on the outside for making sure that the American people have the information to process what Trump's Project 2025 is all about. And we will continue to make sure that that information is available to the American people as they process our future. Later on this afternoon, we will have a continuing resolution that is before the American people that will keep the government open, prevent a reckless Republican shutdown, and make sure that we meet the needs of the American people over the next few months. From the very beginning of this Congress, House Democrats have made clear that we will find bipartisan common ground with our Republican colleagues on any issue whenever and wherever possible in order to make life better for the American people, deliver real results, and solve problems for hardworking American taxpayers. We have repeatedly done it. House Democrats made sure we protected the full faith and credit of the United States of America and avoided a catastrophic default on our debt. House Democrats made sure that we enacted the National Defense Authorization Act into law. House Democrats have now avoided a reckless Republican government shutdown on 5 different occasions to make sure that we meet the needs of the American people and keep the government open. House Democrats provided the votes necessary to ensure that our democratic ally, Ukraine, continued to have the resources to defend democracy, defend freedom, defend truth, and push back against Russian aggression. House Democrats have repeatedly governed in the minority as if we were in the majority in order to meet the needs of the American people. That is the story of the 118th Congress. Questions?
Leader Jeffries, as you talk about the road from the minority to potentially the majority, do you see that road as going through New York? Where do you think we should be looking on the map, given this is not, well, this is probably the last time we'll see you here till the election?
We have important races all across the country, and certainly there are several in New York, which include Long Island, the Hudson Valley, and in central New York. There are also important races in the Central Valley of California, in Southern California as well. And of course, there are races in the Deep South that will be incredibly important in Alabama and Louisiana, and many races that are in the presidential battleground states of Arizona, Nevada, Pennsylvania, Michigan, North Carolina, as well as Wisconsin. So this is going to be a race that will play itself out all across the country. Certainly, there's a heavy concentration of competitive contests in New York and California, but it's an expansive map, and House Democrats are increasingly on offense because we have a track record of accomplishment, a vision for the future to make life better for everyday Americans, and a clear contrast with the House Republican track record, which has produced nothing but chaos, dysfunction, and extremism.
Leader Jeffries.
Leader Jeffries, yesterday I asked Speaker Johnson if he would commit to observing regular order in the certification process for the 2024 elections. He said, well, of course, if we have free, fair, and safe elections, we're going to follow the Constitution. Do you believe in it, given his actions on 2020?
House Democrats are going to do everything necessary to protect our democracy, defend the peaceful transfer of power, and ensure that the winner of the presidential election is certified on January 6th without drama or controversy.
Leader Jeffries.
Chad?
Good morning, thank you. There's been so much consternation about AI. There hasn't been significant legislation that has advanced on AI in this Congress, probably not through the end of the year. Do you think that lawmakers have taken their eye off the ball. We're talking about that being used in the campaigns this fall. It's already too late for that. But what happened as to why people didn't focus on that to get to a legislative solution to address it?
Bipartisan task force on artificial intelligence has been working as hard as they can to come up with a series of recommendations embraced by both Democrats and Republicans to meet the challenges in this environment with the explosive growth of artificial intelligence, which can be game-changing from a positive standpoint in terms of society, but also presents significant challenges. I think that recommendations from the bipartisan task force on artificial intelligence will be forthcoming, and we'll see whether there can be some movement upon our return in November. Thank you. I'll go back over to this side. Thanks. Third row. Yeah.
So as Democrats look toward potentially being in the majority in 2025, you'll have a lot of committee chairs who have been in their spots for a significant amount of time. Do you think the caucus should consider putting term limits on chairs just so that they could only serve, say, like 3 terms like the Republicans have or something similar?
We're focused right now on making sure we keep the government open, avoid a extreme MAGA Republican shutdown that will hurt everyday Americans, and then we'll be off throughout the country to make our case to the American people. Under the leadership of Chairman Pete Aguilar, the Committee on Caucus Procedures will convene over the next few weeks to receive input from members about possible rules changes. That is the process that has been put into place for decades. That's the process that will continue in the 118th Congress as we prepare for the next term.
Leader Jeffries, thank you very much. We've seen tons of chaos, whether it was the speaker fight or whether it was, potential government shutdowns, Ukraine. Is this will Democrats be making the case that this kind of chaos is a preview of what government under a Trump presidency would look like, and how are you going to be making that case to the American public?
Government under Trump presidency will look like what Project 2025 envisions. That is the blueprint for Donald Trump's presidency and the extreme MAGA Republican effort to exercise total control over the lives of the American people in ways that will hurt working families and the middle class and benefit billionaires and wealthy corporations. That's the Trump agenda. And they are not hiding it because they put it into a 922-page document for all of America to process.
Republicans, both House and Senate, have consistently pointed out to us this week that the Senate has not passed a single appropriations bill, despite the bills passing out of committee on a mostly bipartisan basis. Do you think Leader Schumer should bring these bills to the floor? And if they don't act on these bills, are you concerned we're going to see an omnibus?
House Republicans have failed to do their job repeatedly with respect to the appropriations process and have not even been able to move a majority of appropriations bills that they authored without Democratic input onto the House floor and over to the Senate. What is in front of us at the moment is a bipartisan continuing resolution to keep the government open, meet the needs of the American people, and give us the opportunity to resolve any spending issues this calendar year under the leadership on our side of Rosa DeLauro. This is not a complicated thing at this moment in time. We entered into a bipartisan agreement connected to the Fiscal Responsibility Act that was supported overwhelmingly by Democrats and Republicans last May. The Bipartisan Fiscal Responsibility Act sets top-line spending numbers for fiscal year 2024 and fiscal year 2025. It increases both defense spending and non-defense discretionary spending by 1% for fiscal year 2025, and makes clear that there should be no poison pill policy changes included in the appropriations process. That is a framework to get things done for the American people. The problem is that extreme MAGA Republicans in the House have broken their own agreement, which, by the way, was an agreement that they demanded we enter into in order to avoid a catastrophic default on our nation's debt. And then they want to turn around, break their own agreement, and lecture America about what is or is not happening in Washington, D.C. The American people are not fooled. Can anyone name a single thing that extreme MAGA Republicans in the House have been able to do on their own to make life better for the American people? A single thing, just one. Can the American people name a single thing that extreme MAGA Republicans have done to make their lives better? Zip zero. You can't. Nothing. And so, that is a track record that will be presented to the American people. And the only path forward that has been available in this Congress to make life better for the American people has been as a result of leadership from House Democrats and partnership with traditional Republicans who we have urged to break from the extremists in the House Republican Conference. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Leader. Taxes are going to be a huge issue, not only in the run-up to the election, but in 2025 as the 2017 bill expires. Vice President Harris has put forward her plan to expand, small business tax credits, the child tax credit, earned income tax credit. Donald Trump has focused on tariffs. He said earlier this week that without Congress, he would push forward his tariff plan if he were reelected. Given you're the Democratic leader of one of the chambers, what's your response to former President Trump saying that he would bypass Congress if necessary to put forward his tariff plan if he's reelected?
The Trump tariff plan is an aggressive tax on working families and middle-class Americans that will increase their costs by thousands of dollars per year. Under the leadership of Kamala Harris, in partnership with House Democrats, we will lean into the enhanced and expanded child tax credit. We will lean into the low-income housing tax credit in order to address the housing unaffordability crisis in the United States of America. And we will lean into the earned income tax credit so we can benefit working class Americans as part of the House Democratic effort to lower costs and to grow the middle class. We also are going to need to evaluate several of the provisions within the GOP tax scam, where 83% of the benefits went to the wealthiest 1% and saddled our children and grandchildren with $2 trillion worth of unnecessary debt in order to subsidize the lifestyles of the rich and shameless who are connected to the former president. That's the reality of the GOP tax scam. Several provisions in the GOP tax scam expire next year, including the cap on the state and local tax deduction. It's interesting to me that Donald Trump and extreme MAGA Republicans in the House and the Senate imposed a draconian cap on the state and local tax deduction that has cost middle-class Americans thousands of dollars in increased taxes, and then turn around and want to pretend that after being the arsonists who burned down the state and local tax deduction, they're the firefighters to rescue it. No one is buying it. No one is buying that the extreme MAGA Republicans in the New York congressional delegation and the California congressional delegation, who have done nothing about the extreme MAGA Republican imposed state and local tax deduction cap, are going to somehow rescue it. So that's also going to be an issue that Democrats will work on. in the next Congress.
Leader Jeffries, a lot of your colleagues believe that the battle for the House is connected directly to the presidential race. That if Harris can win the White House, boosts your chances for becoming Speaker in January. Do you agree with that analysis, and are you willing to make a prediction in terms of what kind of majority we could be seeing in January?
We are working very hard to make our case to the American people all across the country that we have a vision for the American people, which will continue to be putting people over politics, lowering costs, growing the middle class, and defending freedom, including a woman's freedom to make her own reproductive health care decisions, and contrast that vision with the extreme MAGA Republican plan to criminalize abortion care, impose a nationwide ban, limit access to IVF and contraception, increase the tax burden on working class Americans in order to benefit billionaires and big corporations, and to jam other parts of Trump's toxic Project 2025 agenda down the throats of the American people. We're going to fight this battle on issues. It is certainly a positive thing that Kamala Harris is running a campaign that has excited, energized, and inspired people all across the country, including in many of the congressional races that will determine the future of the House of Representatives.
Any prediction?
No, I think that we're going to work as hard as we can to present our case to the American people and let the American people decide the future of the Congress and our great nation.
So no prediction.
I have thoughts. I'm not sharing them at the moment. Yeah.
Share.
Kevin.
As much as I would like to see if you would indulge in following up on that again. I was switching gears back to home a little bit. I wanted to ask about the situation involving Mayor Adams. There are now mounting federal investigations into people in his orbit, questions about campaign fundraising, plus a litany of recent resignations from his administration. Are you confident in the mayor's ability to fulfill his duties leading the city at this time?
As far as I can tell, Eric Adams is working as hard as he can to be the best mayor possible and meet the needs of the residents of New York City. We need Eric Adams to be successful as mayor because he is the mayor at this moment in time. And the congressional delegation is going to continue to work as hard as we can to help Mayor Adams successfully lead the people of New York City and Governor Hochul successfully lead the people of New York State.
But could this be a distraction from that?
As far as I can tell, Mayor Adams is trying to do the best that he can in one of the toughest jobs in the world to keep the focus on meeting the needs of the residents of the people of New York City. Go to the back, yeah.
Thank you. On Project 2025, you did your forum yesterday, but we know you're also considering the possibility of taking that show on the road and traveling to some districts around the country. Have you solidified any of those plans? Do you know where you're going to go, which districts you're going to target?
The Project 2025 task force being led by Congressman Jared Huffman, as well as the Democratic Policy and Communications Committee, along with the Steering and Policy Committee, are working out plans to make sure that we can effectively communicate on the ground in congressional districts across the country the perils of Trump's Project 2025. And so stay tuned for any announcements that would be forthcoming, likely from the Steering and Policy Committee.
Do you plan to be a part of that? Will you be traveling?
I certainly will spend a lot of time on the road in October throughout the country, and we'll see whether the schedules match up so that I can participate in the Project 2025 hearings. Thanks.
We've seen increasing clashes in Lebanon with Israeli strikes targeting Hezbollah there. Do you have any comment on that conflict?
I support statements that have been made by President Joe Biden at the United Nations yesterday, as well as his national security team that we need to try as best we can to de-escalate the situation and avoid an all-out conflict in the Middle East. Israel, of course, has the right to defend itself, and we will continue to stand by her right to do that, and our commitment to Israel's safety and security remains ironclad. There are challenges on the northern border with Hezbollah, a brutal terrorist organization, having forced tens of thousands of Israelis from their home. And so it is a situation that has to be addressed. At the same time, as President Biden has made clear, de-escalation and diplomacy are the best path forward. Right? Last two questions.
There's some spending priorities that didn't make it in for this piece of legislation. The bridge in Maryland, disaster relief. Are Democrats going to push for the inclusion of these items in the year-end package if that comes together?
We're going to work hard on all of the above, including making sure that we meet the needs of the American people in the context of disaster assistance. Extreme weather events are on the rise, and they affect everyone in blue states, purple states, and red states. This is not a partisan issue. It's an American issue in terms of being there in times of need for everyday Americans who have had their lives and livelihood upended as a result of extreme weather events. It's unfortunate that some within the Republican Party have chosen to ignore the need for disaster assistance up until this point, but we're going to work hard to get this issue resolved in December. All right, thanks. Yep.
Thanks, Leader Jeffries. Just a quick question about the lame duck. What will be the Democratic House Caucus priorities for the lame duck? Specifically, what will you try and get Johnson to bring? Like, what Senate-passed bills will you get Johnson to bring to the floor? What bills will you encourage Chuck Schumer to bring, House-passed bills to bring to the floor to actually get to the president's desk by the end of the year?
In terms of what we consider during the lame duck session, that will be to be decided once the American people have had the opportunity to weigh in about the future of the Congress on November 5th. From our standpoint, the three unresolved issues that need to be addressed are: first, funding the government, avoiding a shutdown, and meeting the needs of the American people in terms of their health, their safety, and their economic well-being. Second, making sure we, of course, pass the National Defense Authorization Act to ensure our military readiness in an increasingly dangerous world. Third, it will be important to see if we can find a path forward and reauthorize the Farm Bill in order to make sure that we can meet the needs of farmers, meet the needs from a nutritional standpoint of everyday Americans, and also continue the progress that we've been able to make in terms of combating the climate crisis. This has been an extraordinary Congress up until this point, filled with unprecedented events. We're thankful for all of you in covering the Congress day to day, week to week, month to month. We're going to continue to do what we have to do as House Democrats to govern responsibly, to exercise common sense, to find common ground in order to promote the common good for everyday Americans, make our case to the American people, put it in their hands on November 5th, and see what happens when we come back thereafter. Thank you, everyone.
What's your favorite Johnny Cash song? Since you weighed in on this. You agree with Snoop Dogg that he was the original gangster?
Why haven't you asked me about the New York Yankees and their success?
Well, they lost to Baltimore last night.
I know my bills.
I love you.
I got here around 11. I was doing,
Always a joy, always a pleasure.
I'm just doing my wrap up of the 118 years.
You're NY1, right?
Yeah.